Welcome back. We are back live on Armory Enlistment. And my name is Matt Quick. Joining me tonight is Tim Donahue, Jonte Waterbury, and Kendra Ford. They keep changing around, but that's cool. This is the Brady Bunch look right here, so we love this stuff. Tonight, we have a great group of senior Army leaders on here tonight, and there's some names you may be familiar with. One is Sergeant Major Mark Clark, the Army G1 Sergeant Major, and one is, for you retention folks out there, Sergeant Major retired Mark Thompson. He's got a beard right now, so you may not recognize him. But tonight, we're talking about the special leave accrual. We know that's a hot topic right now, and the Army said, hey, let us come on here, and actually we begged them. We begged them, and Tim begged them. So to come on here tonight and talk about the special leave accrual, how do I guess maximize your leave as you go forward in this unprecedented time right now. So without further ado, tonight we have about 100 people watching us. It's a big show. So if you take a minute, put in the comments where you're chiming in from, where you're watching from, whether it's Fort Carson, whether it's the center of the universe, Fort Bragg, whether it's Fort Eustis. Hey, let us know where you're chiming into. Give some reactions. If you like the comment, give some reactions. Laugh at him because he's a hoot, but give some love to Sergeant Major Mark Clark, the Army G1, and Sergeant Major Mark Thompson, the former senior Army career counselor. So with that being said, Tim, I'm gonna hand it over to you. All right.
I appreciate it, Matt. Thanks. I really appreciate that. Well, without further ado, nobody wants to see my pretty face, so we're gonna bring our guests on. Like we said, we have the eighth G1 Sergeant Major of the Army. He's on here, Sergeant Major Mark Clark, and the 14th SAC Sergeant Major retired Mark Thompson. He has a long ass title. It's like about 8 words, but I'll let him do that in a second. But first, before we get started on the topic, I'm gonna let my guests introduce themselves. So, Sergeant Major Clark, the floor is yours.
You're muted.
You gotta unmute.
Yep, that's just how I practice it for about 5 seconds with nobody hearing me. Hey, but first and foremost, good afternoon, team, and thank you for having me a guest on Army Reenlistment. This is actually my first opportunity to be able to speak on this platform. I've done this with a few other platforms, so I'm glad to be able to get here to share and answer a lot of questions that soldiers have. So as introduced, I am the Army G1 Sergeant Major. I'm the 8th one to serve in this position. I'm very blessed and happy to do so. 27 years serving in the Army, the entire time as a human resource professional. I'm also married to another Sergeant Major who is also this is my squad Sergeant Major, Sergeant Major Lisa Clark. And so I'm happy to be here to kind of provide some clarity to the special leave accrual policy. As I travel and I talk to soldiers, I truly understand where some of the confusion with the policy exists and some of the concerns as well. And so hopefully tonight, we can answer your questions and kind of relieve some of the angst that a lot of soldiers have had pertaining to being able to take leave or losing leave.
I appreciate that, Sergeant Major. So y'all got that E18 money going on at the house.
That's what I will say. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, so before we get into the topics, I'm gonna let you introduce it. But Sergeant Major, Mr. Thompson, I'm not even gonna call you Sergeant Major. Mr. Mark Thompson, tell us a little bit about your job title now, because it's not the SAC anymore. It is it's a whole bunch of words.
Well, to be clear, I am always the 14th senior career counselor. It's not a former. I'm always the 14th. Just like Sergeant Major Clark will always be the 8th Army G1 Sergeant Major. But team, I really do appreciate having us on here and being able to answer questions, answer candidly on some of the concerns and stuff that people have. But my current role, I'm a government civilian. I'm a program analyst in the Headquarters Department of the Army, Deputy Chief of Staff G1 office in the Pay and Compensation Entitlements Division. So it's not that long of a title, I don't think.
It's
program
like,
analyst. I'm a program analyst.
But
that's
it's like a comma, and then there's more words after the comma. Like there's more. But no, we really appreciate y'all coming on. So we're gonna let Sergeant Major Clark kick it off. And Sergeant Major Clark, tell us about this special leave accrual program and the history behind it.
So I'm gonna kind of go with the more recent history, what really kind of brought us here tonight. So as many of you know, when COVID-19 hit, we operationalized the Pentagon, and we really had to try to get ahead of significant policy changes because of all the restrictions that came with COVID-19 and trying to preserve readiness and protect all of our soldiers. And with that came so many changes to include restricting a movement where we stopped PCS and soldiers couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't take leave in order to protect them. And so because we knew that we had restricted their movement and they weren't able to take leave, the Army, or actually DOD, actually agreed to extend the special leave accrual to allow soldiers who had more than 60 days of accrued leave to be able to roll those days over, not to exceed 120 days. The caveat was the amount of leave days that you rolled over on 30 September were the amount of leave days that you can carry over. And I think because a lot of individuals didn't actually read the message versus word of mouth, it was kind of misunderstood of the intent of the special leave accrual that we approved in 2020. So soldiers were under an assumption that they had until fiscal year 23 to expend 120 days of leave, and they thought that they can just continue to keep accruing leave until they got 120 days. But that wasn't necessarily the case. Soldiers actually needed to take the leave that they accrued in fiscal year 21 if they had over 60 days of leave, with the chances of possibly losing it. So around, I want to say maybe it was around February, March timeframe, after talking with Mr. Mark Thompson, we realized that there was a significant issue within the Army. One was over 50% of the Army had not taken leave yet. So of course we had to dig a little deeper to figure out why. One, we figured out there was a misunderstanding of the policy. And the second reason was, depending on what country you were in, there was still some significant restriction of movements, i.e. in Europe, also in Japan, and then certain places in the U.S. Where commands were limiting movement of soldiers because of the COVID-19 positive rates that were in their areas were not the same all over. So we had to go back to the drawing board and relook the possibility of extending special leave accrual again for a second time because of the residual effects, basically, of COVID-19 as a whole. So that's kind of what brought us here to where we are today, where we took the policy that we implemented in 2020 and we've extended it again for another year with the same rules applying. And so what we want to be able to do today is kind of get after your questions and concerns about the new policy that we've just recently implemented. And I'm going to pause there to see if Mark wants to add anything that I may have missed.
No, Sergeant Major, I think you nailed it. Good job.
So I'm gonna tell you a funny story. Sergeant Major Mark texted me in the middle of the night one night and was like, "Hey, how many leave days do you have?" And I was like, "This is really weird." Like, my wife was looking at me like, "Hey, why are you getting a text about leave days in the middle of the night?" And I was like, "I got like 80." He's like, "I know how many exact you have." And he was like, "You need to take leave," and then that's how I learned about the SLA, about the special leave accrual program, was through that. And so I've been trying to educate my soldiers in my unit about it. Hey, don't lose it. And that was really good that we put it out. So now you talked about the history of the special leave accrual. So Sergeant Major, do you want to talk about the changes that happened in the policy updates that just happened with the signing of the memos that were released last week?
Sure. So, well, actually, I'll actually defer this to Mr. Thompson, because he's actually the creator of the actual policy that we extended out. So I'd like to give him an opportunity to kind of talk about the work that he did for the leadership here.
Thank you. I can't take all the credit. It's definitely, like everything that's the success anyway, team effort. I'm part of a 3-person team in my pay branch, and we looked at it together, worked it together, and coordinated with DFAS and HRC to make sure that what I was seeing was reality. And I unfortunately don't have the time to call the entire Army in the middle of the night to ask them about their leave days and what they're doing. But Tim and I go back a ways, so he got that call.
Yes.
And just to make sure that what I saw was reality. But there really isn't any new changes to this policy from the policy from last year when dealing with our soldiers for the authority for special leave accrual. There's some nuances of it is basically anybody who is in an active for pay status and able to accrue leave in this fiscal year, which means from 1 October of 2020 to 30 September of 2021, they will be allowed to carry forward no more than 120 days into the next fiscal year, into the start of fiscal year 2022. Typically the easiest thing to say is looking at your end of month, 30 September 2021. That's the LES is going to come out in 3 months, right? They're about 2 months. August, yeah, next 2 months. 2 LESs from now.
Don't do public math. Don't.
Yeah, public math, right? These classes don't do math like they should do math. What your credit balance that will become your special leave accrual balance that you will be able to be protected until 2024. Last year's was whatever you had on 30 September 2019, you were able to keep forward until 2023. So the key difference, well, it's not a difference, the same. You cannot exceed 120 days on 30 September. If you have more than 120 days, it's going to get knocked down to 120. That's law. So gotcha. People who, you may have more than 120 days right now. You cannot have more than 120 days on 1 October. You'll get knocked down to 120. That question tends to pop up a lot. So I say typically looking at your end of month LES, but if you take leave in September or maybe the end of August and it's not processed and shown in DFAS and showing up on your LES, you got to know that. One of the key factors is it's up to the individual soldier to manage and track their leave, because you know when you've taken leave, you know when you're not actually at your duty station, that leave will come out, even though it may not get processed, because they can't finalize that leave until you come back. So your end of month September LES may say you've got 90 days of leave, but you took 10 days in September. So the reality is you're going to have 80 days of protected leave moving forward.
So humor me this really quick, because when you were just saying that, I might be not catching on, but so if you had 120 protected days as of September 30th, would your unit start taking leave from that special pot, as well as you're going to still accrue leave concurrent with that? Does that make sense?
Let me answer a question. It may not be the question you asked. So leave is used last in, first out, or LIFO, right? So the last leave that comes in, so in October, if you take leave in October, you're using leave that was earned in September. And you earn a half a day every 6 days, which is considered a pay period, which is 2.5 days a month is what you earn, 30 days a year. So last in, first out. If I think I'm answering your question.
You are.
I think I understand what she's asking.
Well, let's the smart mark talk.
Her question, what I believe, and tell me if this is incorrect, if you have 120 days on 30 September, so your 120 days now roll over, and you're asking, now that you start to accrue additional leave days in October, so at the end of October, you now have 122.5. Are you asking, are they going to start taking the 2.5 days away because you have 122.5 days? I believe that's what the question was.
Right.
Yes.
That break it down for you better, Mark?
Yes, it did. Yeah. So it comes off the top, basically. I like the term LIFO because that's what I read, and I'm a nerd, and I do the reading, all that stuff. But it comes off the top first. So whatever leave you have saved up in the color graphed charts with the green regular leave, orange special leave accrual, and then the now blue and white use or lose leave, it goes from the top down. So as you're accruing it up, it takes from the top. So whatever you have. Now, once you start dipping into your special leave accrual, that becomes your new special leave accrual balance. You don't get to put that back up unless you get deployed or, again, to go to an environment where you would otherwise hit the normal special leave accrual rules. I think to go back to Sergeant Major Clark's thing in the beginning where he talked about the history of this, the majority of soldiers and leaders understand special leave accrual to a point because they've been deployed. And if you've been deployed for greater than 120 days, you more than likely qualified for special leave accrual. But when you come out of that deployment, we always go on block leave. And that last in, first out. So as soon as you go on block leave, and that might be for 25, 30 days or whatever the case may be, you're burning through immediately any special leave accrual you already had saved up. So it was never something that we really dealt with because we took advantage of that block leave coming out of a deployment. But there was no block leave time at the end of the COVID deployment for the Army at the end of last year. So I think that's really kind of where people's kind of confusion came into play. And then, like Sergeant Major Clark said, with the word of mouth.
Okay. And so let me just kind of piggyback on what Mark is explaining. So now understanding with the extension of special leave accrual, here's what I really need everyone to kind of get a grasp and understanding. One, if you have up to or will have over 120 days of leave, I need you, the individual soldiers, along with the leadership. I need my HR professionals out there who are normally tracking use or lose within their organizations to be proactive and ensuring soldiers take the necessary steps to not lose their leave days. They can carry over the 120, but then the clock starts all over again. And so we have to be very deliberate and intentional. There's a reason why we gave you until fiscal year 24 to burn the leave, because we don't want a soldier to have to be gone from a unit 60, 120 days at a time. So this is to be done over a course of time. So you have to really be a little more strategic and methodical in actually planning out your leave to make sure that you get down to a balance of 60 by fiscal year 24. Because unless some drastic natural disaster with COVID or something like that was to take place again, chances are if you aren't down to 60 days of leave and you don't fall under special leave accrual for other reasons like being deployed, as Mark just explained, you will possibly lose your leave day. So this is kind of a do-over, if you will, because what I just explained is what was supposed to happen 1 October of this year. And so we're kind of getting another year to get it right. And so soldiers, leaders, everyone has to be very deliberate in planning out and executing leave for your soldiers and your organizations.
Okay. Kendra, you got a question that you wanted to ask them?
Sorry about that. So it ties in directly a little bit to what we're discussing. My question goes more into, in theory, we think and know that units should provide opportunities for soldiers to take leave, but that's all going to be based off off the missions of the organizations, and there's various factors. So for that soldier who has that time and that senior leader, right? Because a lot of times we'll let formations take leave, but you have those sergeants major or you have the commanders that aren't able to take that leave. What is the process, if there is one, to get a temporary revision to the Title 10-701 that will allow us to carry over more than 120 days? Is that something that is a possibility?
I don't like to say anything's not possible, but timing. It takes years for laws to get made, and that it's statute, it's in law. The amount of leave days you can accrue, like you said, Title 10 U.S. Code Section 701 has the limit on the amount of leave days that can be had at the end of a fiscal year or the start of the fiscal year is 120. Ideally, this situation is going to be a rarity. And I doubt that Congress would even bother entertaining being able to carry more than 4 months of leave. And think about that. That is 4 years. You earn 30 days a year. That's 4 years of never having a day off.
Yeah, that's a long time.
4 consecutive years of not having a day off. When you put that in kind of context, it's like, that's a lot. That's a lot of time. And we do have soldiers that have, but the numbers are very small. And they do have greater than 120 days, but they're very small numbers.
And it would be very difficult to try to explain to Congress that we need to change the law because we failed to take care of soldiers and allow them to take leave and get a break from the daily grind. So that's why it's going to take leader engagement to get after this. No leader is going to want to explain, that, I didn't do the right thing in my organization to take care of my people. Because as you know, the chief of staff's priority is people first. And so to hear that we're not allowing soldiers to take leave, that will fall on the shoulders of the command to figure out the best way to allow these soldiers to be able to take their leave.
And just to kind of double tap that a little bit, we know based off our experience, there are times where we take leave and for whatever reason, it doesn't get processed, so the soldier had rest, had respite, it didn't work. He was maybe in a different state or whatever the case may be, or just staying at home on his back deck looking at the grass grow. But the leave didn't get charged. And we definitely don't want to ask, or we don't want to say like, look, soldiers aren't able to take leave 120 days. And like, what? Didn't we just have a big 4-day weekend, 4th of July? Well, yeah, but that's taking care of the soldiers. Well, maybe you shouldn't give them unchargeable time off. That would be a horrible thing. We don't want people to fix a problem we don't actually have.
No, I definitely agree. We have a lot of questions in the chat. So we're going to start pulling them up. It was just one, so it just popped up. It just disappeared. All right, there it goes. Stephen Gendersack. So as long as we are under 120 days as of 1 October and served on the active pay status this FY, are we okay?
Yeah. The leave amount that you have on your end of month LES, cannot exceed 120 days. If it does exceed 120 days, it's getting reduced to 120 days. Then that becomes your special leave accrual amount. It shows up on the LES as combat zone leave, and that's just a naming convention issue. Even though that's not tax-free leave, unless it was actually earned the tax-free leave, it just DFAS doesn't have the extra button to say this is COVID leave. We didn't create an additional area that said that's that, because that special leave accrual was designed around that tax exemption, that combat zone area and authority. Okay.
We got a question. This one's for you, Sergeant Major Clark. It's since you are the senior G1 Sergeant Major of the G1, Sarah K. Young says, how do we help our unit S1s? We all know that leave is individually responsible. However, commanders are asking who in their formation will lose leave. As you can pull a USAFER to see everyone's leave balance, but it does not show use or lose or what is SLA protected. How do we ones, I guess that's a one. How do we ones satisfy our commander's request?
Yep. So the part about the HR professionals helping is sometimes leave processing a leave sometimes get delayed. And so what we're saying in reference to your role in this is making sure that we are on top of the processing of leaves. I've seen some organizations where it takes some months for a soldier's leave to get processed. And if that is the case now, those soldiers will fall into the situation that Mr. Thompson was referring to, where their leave doesn't get processed, then they end up losing the days, and then the leave gets charged after the fact, and then they lose additional days. So they kind of get hit with a double whammy of the leave being processed late. So that's the part I'm referring to as far as the HR professionals helping soldiers get after this. But you are right, because we've tried to adjust the LESs, and Mark can kind of talk about some of the issues we had so that it will show the actual balance for the special leave accrual, but we kind of ran into some technical difficulties being able to kind of illustrate that.
Yeah. So Mark, do you want to explain how how you guys are tracking it now on the LESs?
So it's tracked. Remember the LES is the front side. It's just the view portal, right? It's not actually the data there. It's all the, DFAS has like the matrix full of data on everything that's being done, days that are earned. There's every 6 days, 0.5 days of leave earned in those 6 days. Was that a combat zone tax excluded area? Was it not? There's so much more. It gets compiled or downsized to be able to fit on an LES. And as everybody knows, we're moving towards the integrated personnel pay system, IPPS, in the future. So at this point, do we delay improving what we're going to fix this very temporary problem, or do we just educate the Army and say, look, this is what it's going to show on the bottom of your LES. Here's how you do the math, and we've decided to go this route instead.
Okay. Shantae, there's another question. You got this one?
Sorry, I got lost in all the questions, but Courtney wants to know, with the new SLA policy being effective in FY24, is there any discussion that's being held in order to change the policy to allow soldiers to sell more than 60 days?
No, and this kind of goes back to the 120-day kind of cap thing. The 60 days is also in law. It's a different law than 701. It's actually in 5373, and it's in the Department of Defense Financial Management Regulation. It's in quite a few different places. It's extremely rare. There are some very rare in the reserve component coming off certain orders. They're allowed to exceed 60 days, but for the overwhelming majority of the Army, 60 days is the max throughout their entire career, which is why it's on the DD Form 214, how many days of leave you cashed in. And we don't want people to lose leave. And, we're really not all interested in people cashing in leave. We want people to take the leave. We want people to get rest, get respite, take a break from work, come back motivated, rejuvenated, take those moments with their family, with their extended family, with friends, and enjoy the freedoms that they're serving and they're protecting. The reason why they're serving is the ability to go and take time off and it's not travel. You don't have to take leave to travel, but just take time off, get rested, get recuperated, and get back in and continue to serve.
And that's another reason why it's also capped at the 120, because you start running into those individuals who may not have enough time to even take the leave that they have, or take the leave and sell the leave in addition, as they're either getting ready to transition, or over the years it just becomes too difficult to manage once you get over that 120 day threshold.
Okay. We got a couple of questions about retirees. And maybe this will be helping out, because one day I hope they'll be able to retire. Kyle Riley says, with the 120-day cap, can future retirees take 120-day terminal leave plus the 20-day permissive TDY?
So to answer the question, your leave is an entitlement. It's an accrued entitlement benefit, or it's an entitlement, not a benefit, right? It's law. It's tied to money. It's tied to your active service, your pay, active service for pay. What you call permissive TDY is actually an administrative absence underneath the news AR 600-8-10. And I like the term permissive because that is a benefit. That non-chargeable leave, that administrative absence, is up to the commander for approval. And not everybody will qualify for the 10 days ISAA and the 10 days of TAA, combined total of 20 days that we're familiar with the permissive TDY with retirement, because there are specific restrictions on who can get it, who can't. To simply answer your question, yes, you can do the 120 days of leave and do 20 days of permissive TDY, but there are going to be some that don't, and that's a case-by-case basis, individual command, and not only with the command, but also the soldier on the qualifications that they have and how they're transitioning.
Okay. Kendra, you had this question up?
Yes. So Tom Edie asks, for those retiring in FY23 and 24 and are stockpiling leave now, will all the leave up to 120 days be allowed as terminal in a single block?
Yes, it can be. And it actually could be more than 120 days of leave, because if they had 120 days of leave on 30 September, they are still going to earn 30 days of leave throughout the year. So they theoretically could take 150 days of leave if their retirement date was 30 September of 2022. I mean, I get the 5 people out there that's going to qualify for that. Very, very, but in the theoretical world, that could happen. But kind of go back to an earlier comment, you really spent 4 years without taking leave? Like, that's a lot of time to have banked up.
They just took days off. They just took days off. That's all.
Yeah.
They ain't come to work. They went TDY a lot. Shantae, you got a question?
Yep. So Michelle wants to know, does a soldier's SLA days from FY20 need to be exhausted by 30 September 2023 or by 2024?
So that's one of the things with this new thing is what was your SLA that you had in 2020 for FY20 is now going to be allowed up to 2024. So what had to be done in 2023 is now going to be 2024, but people took leave. Your SLA may not be the same. We're not going back in time and looking at your 30 September 2020 LES and saying now that gets to go out to 2024. Whatever your 30 September 2021 LES states, you're not going to lose leave unless you have 120 days or more. I guess that's the easier way to put it. So where before the Sec Army signed the memo on 15 July, people were going to lose leave this year. Now the only people that are going to lose leave this year are those that have more than 120 days on 30 September.
Dang, that's a lot.
And the reason why that's important is because it was different across, the Army on people's ability to take leave. So we just made it standard just by just extending it. So versus, again, this 30 September being a cutoff, last 30 September being the cutoff, is this 30 September that's the cutoff. So if you were able to take leave, because there were people who were not in restricted areas who were able to take leave, great. We're happy that you were able to take leave, but we're not going to go back to your previous balance to allow you to carry over days that you were actually able to take during this fiscal year. So that's why it's whatever you have on 30 September of 2021, that gets to get carried over till fiscal year 24, if that makes sense. There's some people who took leave after, 30 September of 2020. So, why would we allow those days to carry over if they already took those leave days?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But so we got a question from Will Woodruff. It says, what level commander can approve 120 days? Is it an Army policy that dictates who signs, or is the local command policy?
It's both.
It's both.
So it depends on the type of leave. There's quite a few different. If you look at the new DA Form 31, and when you click on chargeable leave or non-chargeable leave, or combined, and all the different subsequent boxes that pop underneath there, it depends on the type of leave it is, and the amount of days it is on who has the authority to do it. The Army policy does dictate that the individual commander will establish its own policy. So the individual commanders may elevate approval levels of certain days for certain leave where the authority in the regulation says it could be done at whatever level, and they could elevate that. That's possible. So it's kind of a hard question to ask, to answer for the Army as a whole. But typically, when you get over 30 days, it's reasonable to think that over 30 days is going to be at the battalion level commander of an 05. 60 days is going to be approved by an 06. That's reasonable. But again, there are certain types of leave. I'm pointing to my work computer that I have open with all the regulations and everything on it. But there are certain types of leave that are mandated by Army regulations, have to be approved regardless of how many days it is at certain levels.
Okay.
Got you. All right. So Becca has a question, and this could also probably be unit specific as well. But basically, a lot of us had to turn and leave forms because we were under the impression that we were going to be losing them a lot sooner than, this new update. Is there any way that they can get those forms pulled back so that they can continue to accrue those, or do you just recommend just taking them?
So first, if you can take leave, then I recommend you taking leave to take the time that you earned off. However, and I'm gonna try to make legal sense. If you turned in a leave form and you are not taking leave and you expect to be charged for leave, there is a problem there. And I hope that I'm not misreading this question to the point that where soldiers were asked to turn in leave forms without actually taking leave for the sake of not losing the leave form or the leave days, because that is the wrong answer, and that is not the intent of the policy in itself. If a soldier has a signed and approved leave, that soldier is expected to take leave. So if you've turned in a leave and your leave is approved, take your leave, enjoy your leave. If you're not taking leave, unless there's some reason why your command is saying, hey, no, you will take these leave days, then plan your leave accordingly as you need to.
Okay. Sergeant Major Clark, on your Twitter, when you posted that you was going to be on here tonight, I saw a lot of people asking, why did it take so long? Why didn't you let us know in first and second quarter? So I want to give you a chance to clear that up. Hey, it takes time, right?
Well, part of it is we didn't realize, like I said before, I think it wasn't until March timeframe that we realized we had a problem where, again, 6 months into the fiscal year, 51% of the Army hadn't taken leave. And so as during my travels and talking with soldiers, I began to realize that there was a misunderstanding of the policy. So first, we had to identify that we had a problem. After engaging several senior leaders, they were under the same impression. That's why they weren't allowing their soldiers to take leave. So it was a little confusion that we had to fix. Then the second part came on, who's going to approve it? And so, we initially took this to OSD level, and they deliberated about it and gave the authority back to the services. So once the services got it, Mark and his team wasted no time. And then, of course, just the process of making and vetting and sending the policy through legal, so on and so forth, through the different levels that have to make sure that we get this right. The process in itself, it takes some time, but that's a good thing because we get enough eyes at enough levels to look at it to make sure that we're actually getting it right when we put it out there. And we staff it with the ACOMs and the ASCCs to make sure that there isn't some gaping holes that we may have, and then it gets signed. And you have to keep in mind that also while this was all happening, we were transitioning to a new Secretary of the Army at the same time. So, there was a lot going on during that time frame, and she made this one of her priorities once she got in the seat to get it signed. So we were just happy that we were able to get it done before the fiscal year was over. Could we have gotten it done sooner? I don't know. I think the team probably moved as fast as humanly possible to get it done as soon as they did. But that's a fair question.
Now, I appreciate the answer and the honesty.
Okay. Closing this one out, basically, Chris Brown wants to know, when will our LESs be adjusted to see those additional SLA days on our LES? Is it going to be after the September 30th?
So yes, your 31 October LES, your end of month October LES will showcase what your SLA FY21 amount will be. But to be clear, anything over 60 days is use or lose. The problem is, and that combined total will be in your use or lose blocks on your LES, and everybody has to do their own math, and they have to take that bottom number in the remarks section where it says combat zone carryover or their SLA carry forward balance, and subtract from their total use or lose that shows on their top to figure out what they've got to use or lose that year, that fiscal year. Because if you have SLA, then that means you're going to earn 30 days in a year if you're, as long as you're not separating or transitioning in that year. And if you're thinking about it, go see your career counselor, re-enlist, stay in. But if you've got to do the math to figure out and plan to take those 30 days. What you got to be mindful of is you don't want to end up in 2023 with having to take 60 days of leave in that 1 year or 90 days of leave in that 1 year. You want to spread it out to where you give yourself a manageable amount of time to use that hard-earned leave and take vacation, take time off of work. Try to strategically plan that out so you don't lose any leave. You're still able to meet your operational requirements, and you're still able to enjoy your hard-earned time off.
Nah, thank you. So if you're just joining us, we have lots of questions in there. We can't answer all of your questions, guys. There's a lot of them. A lot of them are specifics, all right? So we have the subject matter experts. They're gonna come on. They're gonna go in the Facebook chat, and they're gonna answer your questions as they go along. They're gonna answer as many as they can, right? But we got to start wrapping it up. So what we like to do at the end here is we like to let our guests and our hosts give a shout out. So we're gonna start with you, Mr. Thompson. Who do you want to shout out this week?
Honestly, I'd like to give a shout out to my team. My team in the Pentagon, Ms. Christine Haynes, Vince Galman. I'll mispronounce his name, but I can spell it correctly. The team at DFAS, Jeff Heining team, Ms. Lorraine Nobes, who's retiring tomorrow, or returns her at the end of the month. She's retiring after years and years, decades of service. She's been the lead manager at HRC, phenomenal. But there were so many hands, so many people, so many Army senior leaders and workers and staff action officers, and me reaching out and waking up Tim Donahue in the middle of the night to ask him about his leave days to make sure that hey, we've identified an issue. What's the right way to fix this? How do we go through it? This is a lot of work to go in and do this. Definitely not done in a vacuum. A lot of hands on it. So I really appreciate being part of an amazing, phenomenal Army. Comprised of not only soldiers but Army civilians as well.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm always up in the middle of the night. I'm usually gambling on like Taiwanese badminton and stuff, so I'm good. Like the Olympics is my joint because I'm up all night just like gambling on FanDuel about like the triathlon. Won like $400 off of that, off of $5. I hit gold, silver, and bronze. I was on it, right? But that's enough about me. Sergeant Major Clark, who you want to shout out?
All right, so Mark already gave a lot of credit to the team who made all this possible, but I just want to shout out to the Army Re-enlistment team here for creating this platform, to help us communicate with the soldiers. One of the biggest goals I want to always be able to do. We do a lot of things in the Pentagon, but unfortunately, it just takes so long for the information to trickle down to the soldiers. And so, by you having this platform, you help us flatten the communication so that we can immediately solve problems that soldiers have, or problems they think they have, and we may have solved it, but they just aren't aware of what the solution set is to their problem. So I really want to shout out your team for making this happen. I really appreciate it. And if we'd have had more time, we could have obviously dug deeper, but we'll look into the chat box and answer some of the questions that a lot of the soldiers are having. So kudos to your team.
And I appreciate that. And that y'all at the G1 always have an open line with us. Anytime y'all want to put some stuff out, you Sergeant Major Gaskins, he loved being on here. I think he like it better than I think he leave early on the metro to get home and get ready. So whenever y'all want to come on, y'all know y'all got that. It's all good. Kendra, who you want to shout out this week?
I shout out my old team at Fort Bliss. Like, I'm gone, but they're taking great care of my new counselor, who's like my little mini me, and I've been checking on him daily, and he doesn't need me anymore. He's doing amazing things. So just shout out to my old team.
You want to give him a name, or just want to call him your mini me?
I mean, he got a name. Some days I give it to him, some days I don't. His name is Staff Sergeant Devin Brown. He's doing great things over that 1AD DeVarding.
Okay. Shantae, you got like a list, don't you?
No, not a list, just mini list. So first, shout out to my SFAC team of career counselors. They're doing great. I mean, I'm not trying to, stir the pot, but we are leading FY21 in ForceCom right now. So shout out to them for grinding. Also, my shirt.
Y'all mission like this big.
Hey, fair share. Cut it out. Anyways, my shirt, I am wearing a Third ID t-shirt today. So shout out to the 2nd Brigade career counselors. I was out there last week, TDY, and I believe they had about 58 or so re-enlistments today. They had a joint, a mass re-enlistment ceremony. So there was over 58 soldiers that either extended or re-enlisted their time in the Army. So I would like to thank them for their continued service. And yeah, that 2ABCT team down there is kicking butt. So shout out to them.
All right, that's cool. Hey, shout out to everybody that's watching. We really appreciate you. These questions are amazing. Y'all give us, y'all tell us what y'all want to get context, what subjects y'all want on here. We'll be on there. I'm gonna shout out my team. Right now, I got number 1 and number 2 in the Army in total re-enlistments. Staff on Kevin Bingham, 312 re-enlistments as of today. Staff Sergeant First Class Sean Curran, 227 re-enlistments, even though he's slacking, but still number 1 and 2 in the entire Army. But really, honestly, shout out to all the leaders out there. Put that information out. Make sure that you're getting it to your soldiers. Platforms like this are only as good as we use them, right? Today, Sergeant Major of the Army went out of his way. He shouted out this town hall, so we got a lot more eyes on it than we usually do. Always come on. We're gonna be here. The videos are always around. They will answer your questions. And thank y'all. And that's all we got this week. I appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all next week, or maybe a couple weeks. I don't know. Whenever they want to let me do a show.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.